Hello friends, about 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who'd sit down and tell horror stories like those old timers at truck stops do, sipping their bad coffee and warning newbies about the road. But something happened to me out there, on the open highway in the dead of night, that changed everything. You might think I'm exaggerating, or maybe I'd been on the road too long, but I swear to you what I'm about to tell you is true. Every single word. It started on a stretch of highway in Arizona. You know the kind. Endless asphalt, heat shimmering off the pavement, no gas stations for miles, just you, the truck, and the hum of the tires. I'd picked up a load in San Diego headed for Dallas, nothing fancy, just a straightforward haul, or so I thought. The dispatcher gave me a route I wasn't too familiar with, some scenic detour to avoid a backup near Phoenix. I didn't think much of it. I've been driving for over 15 years now, seen every kind of road, every kind of driver, and every kind of weather. But that night I saw something else entirely. It was just past midnight when I hit that empty stretch. No cell service, no radio signal. Just silence except for the low rumble of my engine. The moon was hanging full and low in the sky, casting that kind of light that makes the desert look like it's glowing. I remember leaning forward, squinting at the road, when I noticed something strange. There was a figure standing on the shoulder. At first, I thought it was a hitchhiker. Happens sometimes out there, even in the middle of nowhere. But as I got closer, my headlights hit the figure and it didn't move. Not an inch. Most people would at least flinch or shield their eyes. This one just stood there, facing my truck. I slowed down a little, partly out of curiosity, partly out of instinct. And that's when I saw it. The eyes. They were shining. Not reflecting like animal eyes do in headlights, but glowing. Red. Deep, burning red. I've seen a lot of weird things on the road. Fog that rolls in like it's alive. Shadows that move the wrong way. Even people walking barefoot on highways in winter. But nothing like this. As I passed the figure, I felt a cold chill blast through my cab like someone opened the freezer door. That's when I looked in my side mirror and the figure was gone. I slammed on the brakes hard. The tires squealed and the trailer rocked behind me, but I didn't care. I jumped out, flashlight in hand, and scanned the desert. Nothing. Just sand, cactus, and the faint sound of wind. I checked under the trailer, around the tires behind the cab. Still nothing. I climbed back into the driver's seat, heart pounding like a drum, and tried to shake it off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I imagined it. But I've learned something in all my years on the road. Always trust your gut. And my gut was screaming at me to get the hell out of there. So I did. I gunned the engine and pushed that rig harder than I should have. I wanted miles between me and whatever I saw. But about 10 miles down the road, the radio crackled to life. I hadn't touched the dial since I lost signal. At first it was just static. Then a voice, faint, like it was underwater, started whispering. "You shouldn't have seen me." I froze. The hair on my arms stood up. The voice repeated a little louder this time. "You shouldn't have seen me." I yanked the radio knob, turned it off completely, but the whispering didn't stop. It was coming from the CB now. I keep it on channel 19, mostly for traffic updates, but the same voice whispered through the speaker. "You saw me. Now I see you." I ripped the CB plug out of its socket, and finally, blessed silence. But the damage was done. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was riding with me now, that I wasn't alone in that cab, and I'd only just begun the drive. What came next would make me question everything I knew about the road, about life and about death. And the thing that started it all, that glowing-eyed figure, that wasn't the last time I'd see it. Not even close. Let me tell you the rest. I pushed the truck harder than I should have for a stretch, the engine humming with effort as the empty highway unrolled in front of me, like a never-ending black ribbon, but my eyes kept flicking to the side mirror like I was expecting to see. Those red eyes again floating in the dark, and no matter how fast I went, it felt like something was right there just outside the reach of my lights, like it was pacing me in the shadows. I told myself I was just tired. I hadn't slept properly in over a day, and sometimes the road messes with your head. But deep down I knew this wasn't that kind of tired. This wasn't a hallucination, this was real, and it was just getting started. About an hour later, I reached a rest area, a small one barely, lit with a single flickering bulb above the men's room and a broken vending machine out front, the kind of place that feels like time forgot it. There were no other trucks parked, not even a car, and for a moment I debated whether to stop, but the tension in my chest was like a fist and I needed to breathe. I pulled in, cut the engine, and the silence that followed was deafening. I stepped out. The desert night was cold, colder than it should have been for that part of Arizona, and the wind was whispering low through the brush like it was saying something in a language I almost understood. I stretched my legs, cracked my neck, and walked toward the restroom just to splash water on my face, but halfway there I heard it, a soft crunch of gravel. Behind me, not fast, not urgent. Just one slow, deliberate footstep. I stopped, heart hammering in my chest. The wind died all at once, like the world was holding its breath. I turned slowly, but nothing was there. Just my rig, the dark desert, and that one flickering light. Then I heard breathing, close, low, raspy, like someone struggling to inhale through wet lungs. It was right behind me. But when I turned again, still nothing. I backed toward the truck, slowly, never taking my eyes off the spot where the sound had been. And just as I reached the door, I saw something on the driver's seat. A handprint smeared across the glass. Not just any handprint either. It was long and narrow, like it had too many fingers. And the print was black. Like soot or ash. I grabbed a rag from the cab, wiped it off, but it didn't smear it. Flaked off like burned paper. I didn't sleep that night, I just drove. And as I drove, the weirdness didn't stop. I started seeing things on the road, shapes in the distance that would vanish when my lights hit them. Animals crossing that weren't like anything I've ever seen, some with too many legs, others with eyes that glowed yellow or green or red. And the further I drove, the more the highway changed, not visibly at first, but subtly, like the lines on the road weren't quite straight, or the signs had names that didn't make sense, like Exit 0 or Hollow Turnpike. And every time I passed one of those strange signs, the CB would crackle with static and whisper, soft at first, but always the same phrase, "You saw me, now I see you." I tried taking a detour once, pulled off at a normal-looking exit toward a town called Ash Hollow. But the road looped me right back onto the same Highway 5, miles later, like I'd never turned off at all. I even unplugged the GPS and used paper maps, thinking maybe I was being tracked or rerouted. But no matter which direction I tried, the same thing happened. I was stuck on this stretch of road, like it didn't want to let me go. It wasn't just the road either. Truck stops I knew were suddenly gone, replaced by dusty lots with no name, and vending machines full of old candy and expired drinks, and every person I saw, and I mean every single one of them, wouldn't look me in the eye, not the cashiers, not the other drivers, not the waitresses at the diners when they spoke. It was in short, clipped sentences, like they were afraid of something watching or listening, like they were all keeping a secret they didn't want me to know. At one of those places, a guy did say something to me. Though an old man missing most of his teeth sitting outside the gas station in a rocking chair, I handed him a cigarette, and he just stared at me for a long time, then said, "You saw her, didn't you?" I froze. "Saw who?" I asked, but he just laughed, this dry, gravelly laugh, like someone who hadn't used his voice in years, and said, "Too late now, she's in your mirrors now." And he wouldn't say another word. I left that place in a hurry. And sure enough, for the next 100 miles, no matter how often I cleaned my mirrors or adjusted them, I kept seeing something, not clearly, just a shape. A blur, sometimes like a face, pressed against the glass just behind my cab. Other times it was like someone was running alongside me, only visible for a flash before disappearing again. I stopped answering the CB. I stopped using the radio. I even kept the cab lights off completely, because every time I looked in the reflection I thought I saw her, not a hitchhiker, not a woman, not even a ghost. Just her something wrong, something broken in the shape of a woman, like a mannequin, melted and stretched with eyes like hot coals and A mouth that moved but never matched the whispers, and when she looked at me I felt things, thoughts, memories, nightmares that didn't belong to me. I don't know how long I drove that way. Days, maybe. The sun stopped rising. The moon hung in the same place like time itself was broken, and I kept driving because stopping meant letting her catch up. And I knew deep down if she got inside the truck, that'd be it for me. I'd be gone, not dead, just erased, taken, replaced. I saw another driver. Once parked on the shoulder, hazards flashing, I pulled up alongside him, rolled down my window and shouted, but he didn't move, just sat there staring at nothing. So I got out, walked up to the cab and tapped on the glass, and when he turned to look at me, he didn't have a face, just smooth skin stretched tight like clay. And as I stood there frozen, the CB in my cab came to life and her voice whispered, "I told you you weren't alone." I ran back to my truck, locked the doors and drove, until my knuckles bled from gripping the wheel, and even now, after all this time, I still don't know how I got out. It just ended one day. The sun came up. Like normal. The road signs were familiar again. I was outside El Paso. Like nothing ever happened, but the truck was different. The mirrors were cracked and every surface had those black soot handprints like something had been clinging to it for days. And I swear sometimes when I'm parked late at night, I still hear the whispering from the CB even though it's unplugged and the radio hasn't worked in months. So, yeah, maybe this sounds crazy. Maybe you think it's just a story. But I've been a trucker my whole life and I've never been more sure of anything when you see her, and you'll know if you do. It's already too late because once she finds a way in, you'll never truly be free again. I didn't tell nobody about what happened at first, mostly because I figured no one would believe me, and hell, maybe part of me didn't want to believe it either. I thought maybe it was the stress, the lack of sleep, the long nights, and the weird stretches of highway that feel like they eat your mind alive. But the thing is, once you see her, she don't let go. I tried everything once I got home, parked the rig in my usual spot next to Old Man Keller's yard and walked inside like it was just another day. I showered, tried to scrub the smell off me, not a normal smell either. It was something burnt like old wood and sulfur and wet rot all mixed together. I swear it had sunk into my skin like the highway had marked me or something, and the water turned black when it ran off me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear tires on gravel outside, and sometimes the faint sound of something tapping on the window like fingernails or teeth, or maybe even bone. I thought I was losing it, but then things started happening around the house. I'd hear footsteps in the hall when I was the only one home, and pictures would fall off the walls but never break, just land face down like they were trying to hide from something. I'd find handprints on the bathroom mirror in that same black soot even though I hadn't touched it. And the worst was the dog. I had an old beagle named Ringo. Lazy thing, never barked unless it was serious. One night he started howling, not barking, howling like he was being torn in half. I ran to check on him and found him cowering under the kitchen table, eyes wide and white foam dripping from his mouth, staring at the back door, which was wide open. I swear on my life I had locked it, and as I stood there frozen, I felt it again, that weight, that presence, like the air had turned to cement, and the temperature dropped like we were standing inside a freezer, and I could hear whispering again, low and urgent, right behind me. But when I turned, there was nothing, and Ringo wouldn't come out from under that table for 3 days, wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just stared at the back door like he was waiting for something to come back. I took the truck in to get looked at, hoping maybe it was all tied to the rig, maybe something physical, some mold or gas or wiring that was screwing with my brain. But the mechanic took one look at the soot prints on the mirrors and refused to touch it. Said he had a buddy who used to drive long haul out west, and he told him about a woman who walks the highways late at night, always alone, always silent, and if you stop to pick her up, you're never seen again. I hadn't even mentioned her, but he said it like he already knew what I was about to say. He told me not to talk about her, not even to think about her, because the more you do, the stronger she gets, like remembering her feeds her, like your fear is a breadcrumb trail she can follow back to you. And I believed him, because I'd started dreaming about her, not just nightmares but vivid dreams where I'd wake up with my hands covered in soot, or dirt under my nails, or scratches on my arms. And the worst dream I had was when I woke up behind the wheel of the truck in the middle of nowhere. Engine running, mirrors covered in those black streaks, and the road sign outside the window said, Mile 0. I got rid of the rig after that, sold it for dirt cheap to some guy from out of state. I didn't care what he did with it, I just wanted it gone. I took a job locally, started driving short-distance deliveries, nothing overnight, nothing long-haul, just day trips. But even then, she didn't stop. Sometimes I'd pass by reflective glass and I'd see her standing behind me, or I'd hear the CB crackle to life even when I wasn't in the cab anymore. And it would say that same phrase, "You saw me, now I see you." Like she was taunting me, like she was always nearby, just waiting for the right moment. And once I saw her face clearly in the rearview mirror while parked at a red light. She wasn't angry. She wasn't screaming. She just smiled, this horrible smile, like she knew I couldn't run forever, and deep down I knew it too. I started researching online, found message boards, old forums posts from other truckers, guys who had seen her too or something like her. There were stories going back decades, different states, different highways, but always the same pattern: alone. Woman walking along the shoulder dressed in white or black, or sometimes something that changed when you looked away and back, and always followed by bad luck, accidents, disappearances, mental breakdowns. One guy said he picked her up in Utah and ended up waking up 3 days later in Nevada with his rig out of gas and no memory of how he got there. Another said he saw her in his sleeper cab mirror while shaving, and the next thing he knew, his hair was white, and he couldn't talk for a week, like the shock had aged him 20 years. There were dozens of stories like that, but none of them had answers, just warnings. Don't look at her, don't stop. Don't speak her name, don't let her in. But I already had. I had looked, and I had stopped, and I had heard her voice, and now I was marked, and I knew it was only a matter of time before she took me too. I tried everything. Salt around the bed, holy water, prayers from every religion I could find. But none of it worked. All it did was piss her off, and the dreams got worse, more real, more violent, until one day I woke up with a note next to my bed written in soot. It said, "You're almost ready." I didn't know what that meant, but it scared me more than anything I'd ever seen, because it meant she had a plan and I was just part of it. I went to a psychic in desperation, this old woman in a dusty trailer outside Tucson. She looked at me once and said, "You brought something with you." And I told her everything. She said it was an old spirit, older than roads, older than man, something that lives in the spaces between here and there and feeds on those who travel too far alone, and that I had crossed into her territory, and now she had my scent. The psychic said there was one way to maybe break the connection. I had to go back to the place it started and make peace or bargain or offer something. But she warned me that most who try never return. I thought about it for days, and in the end, I knew I had no choice, because every day she got closer, and every night I lost more of myself. So I packed a bag, climbed into a rental truck, and drove back to that same stretch of highway, back to where the signs made no sense, and the road looped endlessly, and the mirrors whispered my name, and I parked at that same rest stop and waited for her to come back, because whatever she wasn't done with me yet, and this time I wasn't running. She came at midnight just like before. I didn't hear her footsteps this time. Didn't see her coming in the mirrors or through the windshield. She was just there, suddenly standing in the middle of the road, like she'd always been there, like she'd never left. And the moment I saw her, the engine died. Everything went silent, like the world had taken a breath and held it, and I swear even the stars flickered out for a second, like the sky itself was scared of her. She stood there staring at me, that same blank expression, that same long dark dress now tattered at the edges like it had been dragging through dirt for centuries. And her eyes, man, her eyes weren't eyes at all, just pits of endless dark. Like if you looked too long, you'd fall in and never stop falling. And I felt myself starting to open the door without meaning to, like my body didn't belong to me anymore. Like she'd reached into my mind and started pulling strings. I screamed at myself inside, told my legs to stop. But they moved anyway, slow and stiff, like I was underwater, and every step toward her felt like I was walking deeper into some ancient grave. And the smell hit me again. That same burn and rot and sadness, like a whole century of death soaked into the air. I stood in front of her now, just a few feet away, and she tilted her head like a curious child and whispered, "You came back." And her voice didn't come from her mouth. It came from everywhere. The sky, the trees, the gravel under my boots and inside my skull, and I nodded, even though I didn't want to, because lying didn't feel like an option. Not here, not with her. And she stepped forward and raised her hand and touched my chest, and I swear it felt like someone dropped A block of ice into my heart, and I gasped and dropped to my knees, and everything went black. I don't know how long I was out, but when I opened my eyes, I wasn't on the road anymore. I was in a field flat and endless under a gray sky with no sun and no sound except the wind, and I saw them. There were others like me, dozens, maybe hundreds of men and women, all dressed like drivers, like travelers. Their faces empty, their eyes glazed over like they'd forgotten who they were, and some of them were just standing, staring at nothing. Others were digging into the dirt with their bare hands, and a few were sitting in the grass crying without sound. And I felt this horrible truth settle into my bones. I was in her place now, her world, the place between places, and she had brought me here and she wasn't done. I turned and she was standing behind me, smiling that same terrible smile, and she said, "This is where they go, the ones who see me, the ones who linger too long on the edge." And I begged her to let me go. Told her I didn't mean to look, I didn't mean to stop, and she leaned close and whispered, "But you did." And I felt my skin crawl like something was moving just under it. And then she stepped back and disappeared, and I was left alone in that endless gray field with the others, and time didn't work there. I don't know if I was there for hours or days or years, but I felt myself starting to fade, like they had forgetting names, forgetting places, forgetting everything except the feeling of cold and silence and sorrow, and I would have stayed there forever, I think. If not for the horn, a loud truck horn, blaring from somewhere distant, and it cut through the gray like a knife, and all the other people turned and looked at me, and their eyes were filled with something like hope. And suddenly I was falling upward, not downward upward like being yanked out of a nightmare, and I slammed back into my body behind the wheel of the truck, gasping and sweating, and the engine was running again. The lights were on, and I was parked at a different rest stop with a different sign and a different sky, and everything was different but the same. And on the passenger seat was a single long black hair and a smear of soot. And I knew she had let me go, but not completely, like she'd marked me and might call me back one day. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but someday. And I'd have to answer. So now I drive, but I never take the same road twice. And I never stop for anyone on foot, no matter what they look like or how desperate they seem. And I keep the mirrors covered with old cloth, and the CB turned off, and I carry a piece of iron in the glove box, and a crucifix on the dash, and salt under the seat. Because you never know what helps, and I tell my story to any driver who'll listen. Not 'cause I want sympathy, but because maybe if I pass it on, maybe if I warn enough people, maybe she'll forget about me for a while, but deep down I know she won't. Not really, because once you see her, she sees you, and the highway never lets go of its ghosts, not really. And one day when I'm tired enough, when I forget for just a second, when the cloth slips off the mirror or the CB crackles on, I know I'll hear her again, that voice like the wind through dead trees whispering, "You're ready now," and I'll know it's time to go back. I started avoiding night routes after that, at least as much as I could. I'd take the longer daytime hauls, stick to interstates with rest stops that had lots of lights, people, cameras, anything that felt rooted in the real world. But you can't avoid the night forever when you're a trucker. Sooner or later you hit the dark again, and that's when it happened, the second time she came for me. But this time, she wasn't alone. I was headed through Nevada, some empty stretch between towns where the road feels like it's coiled around the desert like a rattlesnake. It was around 2 a.m., and the radio was dead silent. No static, no music, just dead air. I'd forgotten to tape the mirror again. I remember that clear as day now because that's how it started. I saw a shape in the mirror just for a second. A flicker, like someone was sitting in the sleeper behind me. I jerked my head back, but there was no one there. I laughed it off, nervous, stupid laughter, the kind you do when you don't really believe yourself. But then the truck got cold. I mean really cold. Breath in the air cold. And that should be impossible out there in the middle of the desert. I cranked the heat up, but the dial snapped clean off in my hand. That's when I heard the knock. It came from under the cab. One sharp knock. Then silence. Then two more. Then scratching. Long, slow, deliberate. Like fingernails on steel. I pulled over. I shouldn't have. Every instinct said keep going. But I pulled over and killed the engine and climbed down with a flashlight in my hand and my heart pounding so loud I swear it echoed off the sand. I checked the tires, the undercarriage. Nothing. Just a thin trail of footprints leading around the back of the trailer. Barefoot. Small. Like a child's. I followed them. I know how dumb that sounds now. But I followed them to the back of the trailer and found the door unlatched. I always latch it. Always. I swung it open. It was pitch black inside, even with my flashlight cutting through the dark. I climbed in slow. 1 step, 2 steps. I was about to take a third when I heard whispering. Soft, layered. Too many voices all speaking at once like wind through dead corn. And then I saw them. Eyes. Dozens of them. All blinking in unison, reflecting the beam of my light back at me like wet stones. I don't remember falling out of the trailer. I just remember hitting the gravel, scrambling back, scraping my hands, raw as the whispering grew louder and louder until it became a scream. A scream made of voices that shouldn't go together, like children and animals and women sobbing and men choking, and then it all stopped. Dead silence. The door slammed shut on its own. I jumped in the cab and floored it, didn't look back, drove for hours until the sky turned blue and the sun came up and the world felt normal again. I pulled into a diner and walked straight to the bathroom. My face was pale, my eyes bloodshot, and on my neck was a handprint. A small one, like a kid had grabbed me, but the fingers, they were too long. I've got more, a lot more, because that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those eyes, blinking, in perfect unison, reflecting back at me from the darkness like a warning. But the thing is, trucking doesn't stop just because you're scared. Freight doesn't care about nightmares. So I took another haul, hoping it would distract me. This one was from Texas to Colorado. Mostly clean highways. Middle of the day start, just how I liked it. I told myself it was all in my head. Stress, exhaustion, maybe even hallucinations. I figured I'd lay off the coffee, stop skipping meals, get some normal rest. But nothing's normal when she knows your name. Nothing ever goes back to normal after that. It was around the New Mexico border when I saw the kid. I was coming up on a curve, this long stretch that winds between low, crumbling hills and scattered desert brush. Sun was setting behind me, throwing that long orange glow across the dashboard. I blinked just once, and when I opened my eyes, there she was, standing in the middle of the highway. A little girl, same black dress, same pale skin, same dead eyes. I slammed the brakes so hard the trailer fishtailed and I felt the whole rig lurch like it wanted to flip. The air filled with burning rubber and panic. I stopped just inches away from her, but when I jumped out to check on her, she was gone. No footprints, no dust disturbed. Just the air, still and quiet, like it had been holding its breath with me. I climbed back in the cab, heart pounding, hands shaking. Turned the key. The truck wouldn't start. I sat there in the growing dark, trying again and again to start the engine when I heard it, the sound of laughter. Not loud, not right away, just a soft giggle. The kind you hear from a child hiding behind a couch. It came from the back. I turned slowly, knowing exactly what I'd see. The cab's curtain was closed, but something was moving behind it. Slow, crawling movement. I reached for my phone to call someone. Anyone, but the screen was cracked. Shattered from the inside out. That's when the curtain started to open. Not all at once, just a few inches. Enough to see a hand reach through. Small, pale, with nails that looked wrong. Too sharp. Too dirty. Like they'd clawed their way through something they weren't supposed to. And she whispered, "You stopped. That means you saw me." I don't remember jumping out of the cab. Don't remember running down the middle of that highway like a lunatic. All I know is I ended up a mile away before I even looked back. The truck was still sitting there, lights on, engine off. But the curtain, it was wide open now. And she was sitting in the driver's seat. Smiling, I hitched a ride with another driver who picked me up a few hours later. I lied and told him my battery died. He gave me a weird look but didn't ask questions. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't sleep for days after. When I finally had the guts to go back and get my truck, it was empty. Clean. Too clean. Like someone had scrubbed it down with bleach. Even the keys were in the ignition, engine starting like nothing ever happened. But I knew she was still with me. She always is. So after that night, I tried to stay local for a while. No long hauls, nothing after dark. I figured if I kept to familiar routes, avoided back roads and ghost towns, I'd be all right. I started doing daytime deliveries for a construction supply company out of Amarillo. Paid less, but I was desperate for normal. For a few weeks, it actually worked. No shadows in the mirror, no voices from the sleeper cab, just regular miles and hot coffee and the radio. I even started to convince myself that maybe I imagined the whole damn thing. Maybe the stress finally broke something in me and I hallucinated. That girl. Then I took a load out toward Roswell. Yeah, I know. Should have been my first red flag. But it was broad daylight, easy miles, and I needed the cash. I figured, hey, aliens over ghosts any day. The first 100 miles were uneventful. Just dry heat, dead land, and the occasional lonely gas station. But then I passed a small, beat-up sign on the side of the road that read, "Last stop before, Dead Man's Stretch." That wasn't on any map I'd seen. I pulled over and checked my GPS. Nothing out of the ordinary. But when I looked back up, that sign was gone. Just disappeared like the wind carried it off. I should have turned around right then, but something pushed me forward. Not a voice, not even a feeling, just this pull. Like the road itself was daring me. About 20 minutes in, the desert got weird. The air started to shimmer like heat waves, even though the temperature had dropped. My radio began cutting in and out, switching channels by itself. At one point, it stopped on a frequency that was nothing but static. And then I heard a girl's voice whisper my name through it. "Don't stop again," she said. "This time you won't leave." I yanked the radio dial off and threw it on the floor. That's when I saw them. Figures along the road. Just silhouettes at first, motionless. Dozens of them, lined up like they were waiting for something. And the weird part? They weren't casting shadows. The sun was high behind me, but they didn't block light. They just absorbed it. I floored it. Didn't even care if I blew out the engine. Those figures didn't move, didn't flinch. But the closer I got, the more I could see their faces. Or lack of them. Just empty eye sockets and mouths open like they were screaming. But I couldn't hear anything. Dead silence. I drove through them. Right through them. Like they weren't real. But my mirrors showed something else. They were turning to face the truck as I passed, watching me go. And the last one? The last one looked like her. That little girl. Only older. Taller. Her eyes weren't dead anymore, they were burning, red and alive and furious. I finally made it out of Dead Man's Stretch just before dusk. Pulled into a truck stop with shaking hands and bloodshot eyes. The guy at the counter took one look at me and said, "You went through the stretch, didn't you?" I asked how he knew. He said, "Only two kinds of people come through that way, locals and the ones she chooses." Then he handed me a bottle of water and told me to pray that she hadn't followed me back. But she had. I know because that night, when I was trying to sleep in my cab, I heard tapping on the window. Not knocking. Tapping. Like tiny fingernails. I opened the curtain. No one was there. But when I turned around, my dashboard was lit up and the GPS was plotting a new course. A route I didn't enter. Back through Dead Man's Stretch. And it was labeled home. I didn't sleep that night, how could I? After the tapping, after the GPS lit up with that cursed word home, I just sat in the driver's seat, watching the horizon, waiting for the sun. I never turned the key, never fired up the engine, just stared into the darkness like something was going to step out of it and drag me into the cab. Every shadow felt too thick, like it had weight. The darkness around that truck stop wasn't normal. It felt alive. The morning didn't help much. When the sky finally lightened, it was a sickly, washed-out gray instead of the blue you'd expect. The other truckers looked like they hadn't slept either, but no one said a word. Just sipped burnt coffee and stared at the ground like we were all in the same nightmare. I tried to brush it off, tell myself it was just exhaustion, hallucinations, PTSD maybe. But the route on my GPS was still there, still labeled home. And every time I tried to punch in a different destination, the screen glitched and reset back to Dead Man's Stretch. I finally unplugged the thing and tossed it on the passenger seat. Figured I'd drive blind for once, just pick a direction, and go. But here's the thing. No matter which direction I went, I kept ending up back at that same gas station. I'd drive for hours. Hours. I'd pass new roads. I'd stop and ask for directions. I'd even try side streets. But every time I pulled off to rest, the sign above the shop would greet me again. Last stop before Dead Man's Stretch. I asked one of the attendants, an old guy with a cloudy left eye, how many of these places there were. He just looked at me and said, "Only one. You don't get it, son. You ain't driving anymore, you're being driven." I didn't believe him until I took the keys out of the ignition while I was parked, and the engine kept running. I damn near threw up right there in the seat. That night, I parked far away in an abandoned lot off the main road. No lights, no cameras. I just wanted to be alone. But even then, she found me. I was lying down in the sleeper, eyes closed, trying to calm my heart. That's when I heard the first whisper, right up against my ear. "You were supposed to come back for me." I shot up, slammed my head on the ceiling. No one was there, but my breath fogged in the air like it was freezing, even though it was easily 85 degrees outside. I reached for my phone to use the flashlight, and every single photo in my gallery was gone, replaced by one image. That little girl, standing in the middle of Dead Man's Stretch, smiling, and behind her, me. But I wasn't smiling. I looked dead, pale, eyes hollow, like something had drained the life out of me. I was standing behind her, like I belonged there. I deleted the photo, or tried to, but every time I did, it came back. 5, 10, 20 copies, until my whole phone was filled with her face. I threw it out the window and started the engine again. Didn't matter where I went now, I knew I was stuck. And here's the thing, friend, this ain't just a ghost story anymore. Something's attached to me. It ain't a haunting, it's a leash. And I think every mile I drive just tightens it. I got more stories, a hell of a lot more. But if you're hearing this, if you're the kind of person that likes taking back roads or driving late into the night, don't ignore the signs. Don't ignore the detours or the random power outages, because you might just end up on a stretch of highway that ain't on any map. And once you do, well, you and I might just become neighbors. Forever. And I know how that sounds, like some crazy trucker ranting into the wind. But listen, I ain't the only one. After that night, I started talking to other drivers. Not the new guys, not the hotshots in brand new rigs with clean shirts and Bluetooth earpieces. No, I mean the ones with the 1,000-yard stares, the ones who smoke 3 packs a day just to keep their hands from shaking. The ones who avoid eye contact like it's gonna curse them. I met one in Montana, parked at a way station that was closed down but still somehow had power flickering in the office windows. He was maybe 60, maybe 80, hard to tell. Beard down to his chest, scars on his face that didn't look like knife work or road rash. He looked at my truck like it was bleeding. He said, "She's riding with you, ain't she?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. He handed me a flask, full of something that smelled like firewood and copper. "You keep driving," he said. "Don't stop and don't look in the mirrors after midnight." Then he walked off into the fog. I never saw him again, and let me tell you something about mirrors. Truckers depend on them. Without them, you're blind. But ever since Dead Man's Stretch, I've covered mine. Both sides. Even the rear view. I drive by sound now. By gut. Because after midnight, especially out in the desert or near the old mountain passes, those mirrors don't show what's behind you. They show what's coming. I seen things in those mirrors. Things that don't match the laws of this world. Pale figures crawling on all fours, keeping pace with the truck even at 65 miles per hour. People with hollow sockets for eyes just standing in the middle of nowhere. whispering my name. Sometimes I swear I see myself, older, deader, smiling back with black sludge leaking from my mouth. I've tried quitting. Parked the truck in a field in Kansas once, tossed the keys, walked to a Greyhound station and tried buying a ticket back to anywhere. The lady at the counter scanned my ID, looked up and said, "You can't leave the road." I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" She just blinked, and I swear her eyes were completely white. "You're already part of the highway," she said. "You belong to it now." And damn if she wasn't right. I boarded that bus, sat down, closed my eyes. Next thing I knew, I was back in the driver's seat, ignition on, fuel gauge full, radio buzzing with static. Like nothing had ever happened. Like the road itself had rejected the idea of me walking away. That's when I realized this wasn't just a haunting, it was a claim. Like the asphalt had sunk its hooks into my soul and wasn't letting go. The road don't want you dead, it wants you driving, forever. I started marking the places where weird things happened, scratched notes into the dash, old napkins, receipts. One of them was a ghost town in Nevada, completely abandoned, yet every house had fresh groceries inside and candles burning in the windows. Another was a rest stop in Oregon where time stopped, literally. My watch, my phone, even the clock. On the wall, all frozen at 3:13 a.m. A woman in a red dress sat by the vending machine sipping coffee that steamed but never cooled, never emptied. She asked me if I was ready to make the trade. I didn't ask what that meant, I just left. But the worst, was in Louisiana. Took a detour off I-10 because of a wreck and ended up in a swamp road that wasn't on my GPS. Trees hung low like they were trying to grab me, and the fog was thick as cement. I pulled over after I heard crying. Sounded like a little boy. Got out with my flashlight, calling out, "You okay, kid?" No answer. Just more crying. I walked deeper, maybe 20 feet from the truck, when the crying stopped. Then I heard my own voice, my exact voice, whisper behind me, "He's not a kid." I turned and there was nothing. But when I got back in the cab, there were tiny wet footprints on my dashboard. You ever seen a trucker cry? I did. In a mirror. He looked just like me. I'm telling you all this not to scare you, not really. It's more of a warning. If you drive long enough, you'll find places that don't make sense. Roads that loop where they shouldn't. Sounds on the CB that aren't from any channel. Gas stations with attendants who haven't aged in 50 years. Don't stop. Don't talk. And for the love of God, don't accept any rides from kids with no pupils or old women who ask if you're tired yet. I keep rolling because I have to. The only thing worse than driving forever is stopping and letting her catch up. Because if she climbs into this cab again, I don't think I'll ever get her out. And if this story sounds familiar to you, if you've seen the girl or the gas station or that cursed stretch of highway with no end, then it's too late. You're already marked. But I'll keep talking. I'll keep the wheels spinning. Because the second I stop, I know she'll whisper from the back of the cab in that cold, breathy voice, "You're home now." All right, here's how it ends. So listen close, because this is the part nobody else wants to say out loud. That ghost, that presence I keep calling her, it wasn't just some random spirit haunting the highway. No, she was the highway, the road itself. A cursed ancient thing that's been feeding off the souls of drivers since the very first wagon wheel crushed dirt and blood into the earth. She's not just following me, she's a part of me now. And every mile I drive, every dark stretch I pass through, she's growing stronger. One night I was driving through the Black Hills in South Dakota, rain pelting the windshield like shotgun blasts, thunder rumbling so loud I thought my rig might come apart. I was exhausted, eyes burning, and that damn static on the radio was worse than ever. Then, through the sheets of rain, I saw her, a pale girl standing in the middle of the road, drenched and smiling, just waiting for me to stop. I slammed on the brakes, but the truck just kept going like it was on ice. She leaned in close to the window and whispered, "It's time." I reached for the door handle, but the cab was locked tight. Then the dashboard flickered, and I had my own reflection behind her, but twisted, grinning like a demon. The radio blared with 1,000 voices screaming my name. The tires screeched, the truck swerved, and suddenly everything went black. When I woke up, I was parked on the side of the road, sunrise spilling over the horizon. No sign of her, no scratches on the truck. But I felt it, deep in my bones, like the road had swallowed a piece of me, like the highway had finally claimed its due. Now every time I get behind the wheel, I know she's there, watching, waiting. Because once you're part of the highway, once she finds a way in, you're never truly free again. The road drives you, not the other way around. And that's the real horror story no one wants to tell. So if you ever see a truck barreling down a lonely stretch of highway at midnight, with no lights but the ones that don't belong, maybe it's me. Or maybe it's the highway itself, still hungry for the next soul to keep it moving forever. Drive safe out there, friends, because the highway never forgets.